Hey guys, this is Fady from Harvey Productions and welcome to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be going through the Galaxy 64 console and all the features of the console, how to use the console, all the routing, patching, and how to connect stuff in and out of it. Um, One of the big things about the Antelope Audio is that their console it feels very complex, but it's because it's becoming a full digital patch bay of grabbing audio from one place, sending it to another place, and back and forth and all over the places, which is incredible. But it takes a bit, or it takes a second to understand and just wrap your head around it. And once you get that, it unlocks so many features for you in your studio. So that's the goal of today's video. We're just going to go through the console. We're going to go through all the settings of the console and then how to use that console and all the routing options and the flexibility options of that unit. So let's just kind of dig in right away. So when you open the console, this is what you're seeing, which is it's very similar to the Galaxy 32, a little bit similar to the Orion Gen 4. Um, at the top, you got on and off for the unit. You got the clock source for the unit. If it's the unit is an external sync or internal, you got the different sample rates. If I have my MRC connected, this will light up and I'll connect to it. And then you got a basic setting feature, which basically tells in it the panning settings, surround EQ as pre or post, oscillators, and you got oscillator 1 and oscillator 2 choosing different frequencies for these oscillators, the brightness, Thunderbolt latency mode, which I've always kept it in normal, and then the DC coupled input and outputs to activate these on or off, which has to do with your analog sensitizers being connected to your Galaxy. That's for that part. Now, going to the top right section, info is just some information about the unit and about serial number and stuff like that. And in session is really how you save and load stuff on that unit. So project session up here is going to be your master scene that you save or load. So when I click save on here, you guys will see it's basically giving me now to save, and I'm choosing what to save. I'm choosing to save all my AFX, I'm choosing to save my mixers, I'm choosing to save my mic emulations and routing and digital IOs, analog IOs, everything, and this has become my master save. Now, once I save, I can also create software and hardware presets. So hardware presets is just save one of these settings as a hardware preset and then recalling this from the touch control on the unit. I see P1, P2, P3, and P4, which this is where the hardware presets, but then software presets will be the presets on the MRC, which is the A, B, C, D, E, and A, B, C, D, E. There's 5 of them, which is equivalent to these 5 up here. So that's pretty straightforward. Okay, now let's go starting at the top left, routing. Routing is the main window that you're gonna wanna work on when you get the unit, and this is the first thing you're gonna wanna connect. And the way that the Antelope interface works, or the Galaxy works, is that you have the rack unit itself has insane amount of IOs. You got analog IOs, you got digital IOs that are a form of SPDIFs, AES, MADI, Dante, HDX. I mean, there's so much. Right here is where you got all your inputs and all your outputs in one place. So the top row is all my inputs, bottom row is all my outputs. And then on all of the inputs at the top here, I get to choose or hide what I want to see. So you guys see I'm choosing or hiding stuff. And then the bottom row, same thing. So let's start, for example, first line here says line input 1 to 32 and line input 33 to 64, which is the physical 64 inputs. They're analog inputs on the back of my unit. So I'm just relabeling these what they are. So like I have here my heritage audio is connected to the first 8, my Ventec audio to the next 4, and then I have my patch bay and I have a bunch of other stuff connected and I'm just relabeling them. And then after that is my DAW output, which is my playback from whether it's Pro Tools or Logic. This is how I set up my playback. So this is, I have my first 2 playback outputs are my main mix, and then I got mix B, and I got mix C, I got mix D. I also got several dedicated DAW outputs for headphone mixes, and then I have this will go to my patch bay outputs. And then I have all 16 channels of summing. But so here's kind of part that it feels a little confusing, but I want to explain this in a simple way. Just because you chose that uh, DAW playback output 1 and 2 is your monitor mix, it does not make this go to your monitors. Now, you're telling Pro Tools that channel 1 and 2 are labeled monitor mix. I still need to grab those because these are DAW outputs, which are virtual outputs. Like digital outputs are being virtually patched. And I need to grab that output and send it to where do I want to send it. So in this case, I will grab my main mix, which is that two yellow ones, and I drag it and I put it on my monitor outputs at the bottom, which will be where my physical speakers are connected. For example, second example, my analog summing. So I have 16 channels of analog outs coming from my Galaxy going to my dangerous music. So then I have here channel 33 to channel 48, which is my analog summing coming from that unit. I will drag these and then now coming from the DAW output. Now I drag these and I assign them to which physical outputs on the back of the unit going to my dangerous music, which in this case, I drag all of these and I'm sending them through channel 33 to 48 on the back of, so two DB25s. So this is something, and the same concept apply to everything. I'm going to take, for example, these, which are my patch bay outputs that are coming outputs from my DAW, and then I will assign these to whatever physical line outputs goes to my patch bay. Then you consider the same scenario coming back in. So because a channel came back into line input, so let's say line input 1 to 8 is my heritage audio. My microphone pre is right here, my heritage audio coming direct input into channel 1 to 8. It doesn't mean automatically it's being recorded in 1 to 8. For me to record it, I need to assign my DAW input, which is at the bottom down here, DAW input 1 to 32 and 33 to 64. And that is, you guys can see, I've assigned, so I drag my line input and I put them in my DAW input. Um, why does that matter? Because you can only record 64 channels of audio at once. So whatever your software that you're using for DAW, like Pro Tools or Logic, this interface is being recognized as a 64 playback in and 64 playback out. That's, or I'm sorry, 64 in and out IO. That's how you can record 64 channels at the same time, and you can play back out 64 channels at the same time. But in reality, that interface have hundreds of channels, because Maddie itself has 64 and Dante has 64 and analog input and output each has 64. Then you got your AAS and you got your SPDIF and you got your HDX and you got all that stuff. So why does that matter is because at the end of the day, you will choose, you have 500 channels connected to your interface, but you're choosing 64 of those 500 and dragging them into analog, dragging them into DAW input, and these will be the 64 channels that you will be recording. So now going through that setup again, line inputs will be physical line inputs going into my unit. DAW outputs is the playback from my DAW, whether it's Pro Tools or Logic or whatever. And then Dante input, it's the 64 channels of Dante that are coming into my unit. And then AFX, we'll get to it in just a second. These are the mixers. So the Galaxy 64 have 8 stereo mixers, which is cues, like headphone mixes. And then these are the stereo mix of those headphone mixes. And then I'm hiding some of the stuff, but I can, so here's like mixer, the rest of the mixers, for example. And then here is the rest of the Dante and the rest of the Maddie. And then you also got HDX, which this unit takes 128 of HDX. So here's all my HDX inputs and outputs right here. And now going down, bottom row to the outputs, which I feel like the term inputs and outputs is not necessarily very accurate. It kind of might throw you off a little bit. I'm just going to call it top row and bottom row. That's a little easier. The top This one here is, it says line outputs, which are the physical line outputs coming from the unit. So here you go. Now I am showing 1 to 64, all 64 physical line outputs connected to the back of the unit. So you guys can see they're getting patched from all my DAW outputs, basically. Um, HP, this is going to be, I'm going to mute this. HP is your headphone, because the Galaxy 64 has an actual headphone amp. So whatever I'm routing to that headphone amp, so I can route the main mix to the headphone amp, grab it and put it here. So whatever that headphone is listening to the main mix. Well, I want to send them their own dedicated mixer, mixer one, left and right. So I'll grab this and put it under HP. And that's whatever HP is whatever I'm feeding it here. Monitor is the dedicated physical monitor, left and right from the back of the unit, going to a set of speakers. And then DAW input, you got 64 DAW inputs. It's what your software will record in Pro Tools or Logic. So these are all the 64. You got Dante output, which I use actually the Dante output because I sent Dante signal from the Galaxy to my Grace design. And you can see I'm grabbing my DAW output and I'm patching them to Dante outputs. I'm also grabbing all my headphone mixes outputs, or like the stereo mix of the headphones, and sending them to Dante outputs. That way on my Grace, I have several channels coming from my Galaxy and I get to choose what I'm listening to. If I'm listening to the main mix, I'm listening to mix B, mix C, I'm listening to headphone mix 1, headphone mix 2, which is a really cool feature because it allows me to quickly select what I'm listening to, and I can mirror what an artist is listening to. I can listen to their mix and then make sure I make changes for them properly. And then AFX, which we'll explain in just a second. And then after that, you got your mixers. And the mixers, there's 8. I'm hiding the rest of them. Like I can activate them. And basically what it is, each one of those mixers have 32 channels. And then what you're doing is you're going to grab from the top section anything that you want to be listening inside that headphone mix, and up to 32 of them. So let's say I'm tracking vocals and the vocals are connected to my Heritage Audio channel 1. So I'll just make sure that that Heritage Audio channel 1 is connected in here. And I want also the artist to listen to the playback music, so I'm going to send my main mix. And I wanted the artist to listen to the click, so I grab the click and put it in there. And I want the artist to listen to something else. And then I just grab whatever I want and I put it in that mixer. So now whenever I'm listening to the outputs of that mixer, it's going to be whatever 32 channels inside that mixer. And the mixers have their own dedicated tab at the top here. When I click on it, you guys will see here at the top right, I got 8 mixers. And then I'm selecting mixer 1. So right now this is my mixer 1 and it shows in it all 32 channels that I've assigned. You can see I've already, some are not even assigned because I am not using them. And then I can stereo link, I can solo, I can mute, I can pan left and right, and I can turn volumes up and down. And then only mixer 1 has a built-in reverb, the Aura verb, that one, which it's like a built-in reverb for quick listening. It's only listening. It's not to be recorded. And if I click send, it just sends to that reverb and it applies some of that verb. So this is a quick way if you put your singer in mixer 1 and then they want to have a little bit of verb on their vocals, then you click send and then boom, you got verb on their vocals. I wish they would have added that feature to all of the mixers, but they only put it in mixer 1. Now, this is basically the routing. Everything from the top row, you grab it and patch it to something on the bottom row. Now, one of the cool things about the Antelope Audio that other interfaces don't offer, it's actually one of the things that I missed in the Apollo that I wish they would have had, is I can take, for example, a line input, which is my, let's say the first channel, my H1, which is my Heritage Audio channel number 1. I can take that line input and I can send it to so many different places. So I can send it to a dedicated physical line output and direct it to my patch bay, for example. I can also send it to Dante. I can also send it to MADI output, and I can also put it in the headphone mixer, and I can send it to a headphone output. Like I can take one channel and send it to multiple outputs in the same time. I can even send it to line output number 1 and line output number 5 and line output number 9. So line output number 1 goes to my AP2500 and line output number 5 goes to my SSL and line output number 9 goes to my Pultec. I'm just giving some random examples, but just to kind of show you the potential, because any signal can be sent to as many places as you want. Some are analog and some are digital, and the unit carries all the conversion in it and it takes care of that part. Okay, so this is the routing. We talked about the mixers. HDX are basically, it shows you all the inputs, shows you HDX cards, and it shows you all the trim on all these HDX. We'll get to AFX in a second. Trims is the trims on all the 64 channels of analog inputs and 64 channels of analog outputs. And then that top one over here is just dedicated, not a trim, but it's the DBU for the monitor controller, for the dedicated monitor outputs, and you get to choose what signals they would be. Meters. Meters is basically a window where you get to see 32 channels of meters, which 32 channels you get to choose. And whatever you select here will also be the same thing that will display on the little touch screen that the Galaxy have. So I can go here and I can say line input. Now I see all 32 line input 1 to 32. So now I see all my 32 channels of line input. So to test it, I'm going to turn on my analog synthesizers, which I believe plugged into the first 2 channels. So if I play now, you can see, I see that I got signal in there. So it's just a quick, simple way to show signal in and out. That's meters. And then surround, we'll get to it in a second. So let's discuss AFX, and then we'll get to surround. So AFX is Antelope's way of using plugins on a DSP chips on the unit itself. So you can use these plugins while you're recording, monitoring, whatever, and then you can monitor these plugins in zero latency, pretty much zero latency to people's ears. The way that they don't work as an insert, but they work as similar to effects channels on old school boards. I got a microphone, I'm going to send it to an effect track and bring it back. That's how it works. So right now, AFX, and you get here on the Galaxy 64, you get double the amount. So you get 64 channels of AFX. And then, so I'm going to go now to channel 1. And then I can go here really quick. And then I can add an effect. And let's say I'm going to select an EQ. And I'm going to put that EQ. Just like an old school Pultec. Now I'm going to go to my routing. And then my analog synthesizer, for example, is coming to my heritage one. And I want to send that to the effects. So I will, I'm going to grab this from the top. And I am going to dig it to the bottom into AFX channel 1. You guys can see it, AFX channel 1. Now, if I go to AFX here and I play, you can see that there's signal. It's going there. Now, I'm sending signal. I still need to grab that signal and bring it back to record it or to monitor it, which will be, in my routing, is going to be AFX1 out. So now the AFX1 out, I grab it and put it anywhere I want. Okay, let's say I want to record this into my DAW. Then I grab this and put it into my DAW inputs. I want to send it to the headphone mix for somebody to listen to. Then I'll grab it and put it into mixer 1, channel, whatever. Which is a cool thing how they set up the AFX. Because of how it's done in this way, now I can record, my analog synth raw signal, I can grab that and assign it to my DAW unrecorded. I can also grab the AFX signal of my analog synth and assign it to my DAW and record it, in which means I get to record both signals, dry and wet. Also, as a recording engineer, sometimes I don't want to listen to some of these effects that the artist want. Because a singer would say, I want my vocals to be so bright. So I put that Pultec EQ and crank the top end because that's how they like to hear themselves. But I'm a recording engineer. I want to be able to judge and make sure that the quality of the mic is tracked properly. But if I'm only listening to what they're listening, I'm making poor judgments. So I will send the AFX signal to their ears. But for me in here, I will send to myself the raw signal and not the Pultec signal. That way I can make proper judgments as a mixing engineer. So now this is for basically that's the AFX. You got 64 of them. This thing takes, I believe, up to 256 plugins running in real time, which is insane how much DSP processing is in here. So that's what the AFX does. Now, surround. Surround is a cool thing that Antelope started to implement, and now they have them on the Gen 4, the Orion Gen 4. They have them on the Galaxy 32 and Galaxy 64. Both Galaxy 32 and 64, the license automatically comes with the interface, but I believe on the Gen 4, you have to either purchase the license, or if you purchased one of the MRCs, it comes with a license. What a surround does has multiple applications. Application number one, you can select on the left side here your speaker configuration, and it supports all the way up to 9.1.6, which is a full Dolby Atmos setup. And they basically have all the basic features of what a Dolby Atmos setup would need. So if I select this, now I got all 16 speakers. I got control over each speaker, and I got high pass filters and low pass filters, and I got bass managements. And then I can also apply individual EQs on each speaker. I can apply delay compensations on each speaker. Just basically a full Dolby Atmos surround setup baked inside the interface. And I can grab my DAW outputs, assign them to these surround outputs, grab these surround outputs, assign them to a specific physical line outputs from the back of my interface to go to my speakers. And that's how I would use it. At the top here, you guys now can see now that I changed it to 9.1 to 16. You'll see here all the output levels of the whole thing. You also see the surround monitor level, you get to mute or you get to dim. And then you can see here surround delay, and you get the bass management, which has in it full-on bass management, what you would have in any bass management monitor controller or um, Dolby Atmos or surround setup, because I have here subs and I got speakers, and I can apply where's my filter and where's my low pass and where's my cutoff, and then I can control all of these, and you can see here all the volumes for here's my left and right, or the volume of my center speaker versus the volume of my heights or left rears or left tops. I mean, it's a full-on detailed surround setup baked into the interface. Now, that's for people using surround. Now, if you're not using surround, you can still benefit from this. I would go to the setup here, and for example, I'll choose 2.0, which is you only have two speakers. Why would you use this? Because Antelope gives you EQ on each speaker. So this is left side has an EQ and right side is an EQ. And that EQ is 16 band. So then I can basically grab that EQ, and then I can go here, and then I can just do this and make some modification to the EQ and just basically do room correction to my room. And then grab that specific speaker and send it to, or that EQ and send it to the specific speakers. Basically become built-in DSP room correction EQ. I can also do a little bit more. I can adjust gain for each speaker different if I got one side a little bit louder than the other, as well as, I'm just gonna cancel this, as well as you can create some delay between speakers to balance if one speaker is a little ahead, or you want to create some delay compensation for these speakers. And you can copy your EQ from one speaker, paste it to the other. You can reset your EQ. It's just basically become a simple, quick, built-in DSP EQ, which, like in my case, I'm using my Grace design to do this, which cost a fortune, but here that's already built in to the interface. Um, that's for this part. And then if I select monitors and do you see those tabs up here? So this will show me all the controls with the surround tab, but this show me the controls for my main monitors and my headphones, which would be the dedicated left and right output on the back of the unit for monitors and the headphone jack on the front of the unit. It's kind of pretty much this is it. Once you get the idea of all the features and what it offers, you'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. There's so many tabs and stuff like that. But once you understand all of it, it makes sense because you have audio coming from so many places and audio going to so many places, and you got to route and patch stuff. I mean, we're talking here pro line interfaces. This is not an interface for somebody who wants to plug in a couple channels and playback. You know, this is made for studios that have tons of gear, and you got audio coming from a control room, and you want to send audio to a controller and Dante to a different room, and you're using HDX, and you want to send Maddie to headphone outputs, and it's just a lot more intricate and complex, but in not in a bad way. It's complex in a way that serves your studio setup and the flexibility and the routing, which is honestly one of the main reasons why I upgraded to those. Being able to have that flexible routing, that was my most important thing. And having all these different forms of IOs in one unit was a game changer to me. I used to have like an interface has inputs, or 16 and 16 and one SPDIF, and that's it. And then now if I want MADI, I need to get another unit and attach it and get MADI, and then another unit to get ADAT, and then another unit to get more IOs, and another unit, and then, well, this, I need to get a different card to potentially add HDX in a different card. You guys get it. But in this case, that unit has analog ins, has analog outs, has SPDIF in and out, has AES in and out, has MADI in and out, has HDX in and out, has Dante in and out, has dedicated headphone outputs, has dedicated monitor outputs, has lots of clocking and word clock in and out. It kind of does. I think the only thing that they took away from the Galaxy 64 is the ADAT. That's the only thing they took away, but it literally has everything else. Insane amount of IOs. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions about the console, or you also have any issues with it, or you need help, shoot me an email. My email is in the description below, and I do a lot of consultation with Studio. I can schedule a session, remote, log into your computer via Zoom, and help you with your setup. Also, if you're interested in purchasing any of them, make sure to use the code that I have in my description below, and it will get you 10% off of any of the Antelope products on their website. I hope this video was helpful, and make sure to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys at the next video.